Hello, I'm Matthew. Welcome to my home here in Kentucky, and certainly welcome to my garden. You're going to hear all the real garden sounds of wind and chimes blowing in the wind. Also, I wish you could see and smell that I'm looking out and still have quite a few roses. Particularly one of my favorite yellow roses called Winter Sun, which is appropriate because it's rather chilly today. Also, I have some fuchsia pink roses that are beautiful, but we're not going to use them today. Stick around and you'll see why. First of all, whether you are just finding me or you're sticking around for more, thank you very much. I cannot say how bowled over I am and how much I appreciate everyone who's found me recently. You have found me on Instagram, you've found me here on YouTube, a few of you have found me on Facebook, some of you contact me through my website directly, and not only are our numbers growing, but I'm always heartened that numbers don't mean anything without engagement. And you engage me, you send me messages, you tell me what you're up to, you tell me how you use the ideas I've proposed. And I just can't thank you enough. We are indeed a diverse and growing community, and that is one of the things I am most proud of about my little business. Today, I'm filming right at the end of November, and I am making for you a two-part holiday series. There's the wind blowing in. It's not as cold as it sounds, but I'm glad I've got a sweatshirt on. I'm making a two-part series for you on holiday decor. And before I talk about the vases, yes, I'm probably going to title this film something like One Ingredient Wonder, because that is exactly what it's going to be. Stick around and you'll see. But I want to first tell you sort of how I feel about the holidays. I'm filming now, as I said, at the end of November, but I've been thinking about the holidays for some time. And that's really the point of entry where I hope you'll come along with me to consider holiday decor afresh. And here's why. When I was in school, for example, I was always happy to sit in class and listen to the lecture, but I was not very appreciative of being given assignments. I thought, well, I have learned what has been taught, and I'll use it as I like, and that assignment's just for the teacher. I was not very interested. I was even less interested when I received an assignment returned and in red ink written "do over." I didn't want to do it the first time. I sure as the devil didn't want to do it again. And that's rather how I personally feel about holiday decor. Either, on one hand, you have repeatedly drug out the same tired, let's face it, basically baubles on branches for most people, year after year after year, and it's always the same, like in school, just the perpetual lifelong do-over, which does not interest me. Alternatively, every year or every few years, you scrap everything you've collected in terms of holiday decor, and you replace it with a different color, a different look, and yet it's still basically the same thing. That's one of the reasons I left the really high-profile work I was doing with big-name clients in Washington and New York and all of that, is people said, oh, your life is full of diversity. It's always something different. And I thought, well, maybe today it's 300 guests and tomorrow it's 2,000. And maybe the china and the linens are different, and one day the flowers are red and the next day they're white. But it's basically the same thing, day after day. So I've never been interested in that. And as I have reevaluated my own holidays and how I observe them, the thing that I've learned, and I encourage you to reflect upon as well, is this. When we stop repeating tradition simply because it's tradition, it gives us the opportunity to discover the aspect of those traditions that are most important to us. For example, maybe it's a cake that your grandmother made, and that's the most important thing to you. Good, make the cake. But you don't have to do everything else that happened over all the generations to connect with that heritage and the memory of your grandmother and her cake. Maybe it's simply the gathering of family or friends. Great. You don't have to do all the expected folderol just to make the most of an extremely meaningful gathering. And I would add that when you're not exhausted and run absolutely ragged, you can enjoy yourself all the more. Henry David Thoreau wrote in the 19th century that our lives are frittered away in detail. And I think that's hugely, hugely applicable to our lives today. He also wrote that our happiness, we are happy in proportion to the things we can do without. So this holiday, instead of saying, let's max out everything we can do, I encourage you to join me in thinking more simply. What can we do less of better in a way that is even more meaningful for us? So, all that said, I'm not putting up a Christmas tree this year. That's not what seems right for me, and as I said, I've been thinking for a while. I usually put together something fresh cut, and I usually put together something with live potted plants. So those are the two things I'm going to give you in this series. In this episode, we will talk about fresh cut flowers for the holidays. It does not matter what holiday it is. It could be Christmas, it could be Hanukkah, it could be New Year's, it could be you love the winter and you want to have something a little special in your house, simply at this time of year. I certainly don't dictate what you do or don't celebrate. And in the next episode, watch for that film separately, we'll work with a really dazzling little composition you can do easily and inexpensively, all with potted plants that, if you so choose, you can reinvent in other ways. You can use the plants for other purposes later. So, what are we going to do today? I'm going to propose for you a vase arrangement that is very different than any you've seen me do. Typically, I do these voluminous grand arrangements, botanic portraits of season and place, which I stand by entirely, but I'm going to approach it differently this time. No matter what we're doing in life, I think it's always beneficial to consult multiple points of view and filter them through our own experience and what is practical in our daily lives, and then we probably come up with an awfully good idea that is a bit of this one and a bit of that one. So, just like I have taught you about vase arranging, the same basic foundation is true. To be successful, it all comes down to choosing the right container, the right vase, and the right materials to go in. And today we're only going to use one. I'm going to show you some fabulous oriental lilies, and a really stylish thing you can do with them. But our starting point is the vase, and I brought several out because I always want to show you what's possible. Whether you take my paid classes through my website or you only know me for my free content on Instagram and YouTube, I always want to be a voice for illustrating what can be done, because a lot of people just simply have no exposure until they see it. And if I can help you see it, I'm doing my job. So we're thinking about lilies for our residence, our home. We're not doing a hotel lobby. This is not, the food halls at Harrods. We don't have to be ostentatious, but we want something nice. We're celebrating. So let's just work across the table. The first thing I have is the most plain. It's just a clear glass container. I sort of jokingly call this a spittoon form, and you see why. It also reflects where I grew up in the world. It's sort of an hourglass form, and that might be valuable. You see, I brought several out that are similar. This is lovely. And I will also mention, if you're new to me, if you've been with me a while, you already know, I'm a huge proponent of sourcing your containers. I mean, maybe the rest of your furnishings in life as well, your tables and chairs and all the rest. But when you source vintage or antique materials, you find interesting objects, very often beautifully designed and exquisitely produced, at a tremendous value. And when you bring in that element of chance, you are elevating your designs right from the start. I never even knew to go out looking for this vase, for example, but I went into an antique mall and I found it, and it had sat there a long time, and it was on a tremendously low price, and I'm delighted to have it. We might even end up using this today. We shall see. This one, I'll bring it out where you can see it. and try not to stand behind it. This is a huge trumpet vase in silver plate, and I have not polished it to show you, but it might even be quite stylish like this, though I would not use it without a liner. I have used it many times. My mother gave me this, I think as maybe a graduation gift from my college undergraduate program, and I used it for flowers at my senior thesis art exhibit. It was on a plinth in the middle of the gallery full of gladiola and curly willow, and it was quite dramatic. Anyway, we could use this, but must use a liner. Never ever arrange in metal, because the metal can react with the water and cause some flowers and foliage trouble. I'm consequently not going to use this. This makes an awfully big arrangement, which is maybe beyond what you would try at home, and I want to show you something that will inspire you to really be confident to try it. Isn't this beautiful? This is an example of a vase. I don't know who made it. It's crystal. It's rather nice, but not terribly dear. I found one in a real junk shop. I mean, like charity shop is probably putting it a bit of an exaggeration. And I bought it for, I think, $5. And soon thereafter, I found a duplicate in a different charity shop, and I had to pay a bit more. But now I have a pair. And that happens pretty often. So this is a good contender, particularly because the lilies I'm going to show you are heavy blooms on long, straight stems. We've got the height to accommodate the stems, and we've got here a little bit of scalloping, which might help us secure at least some of the blooms in place. Moving right along. This is an exquisite vase, and it is not signed. I don't know who made it. My husband bought it recently and had it sent to me from a gallery in Washington, D.C., where I used to live. And I think it's absolutely beautiful. We might use this. The cutting on it is really spectacular. To be determined. As you see, I haven't even decided exactly what I'm going to demonstrate, because I'm genuinely thinking as we go along together. This one I love. Interestingly, this one and this one, my husband and I found at the same day in the same market, but from different dealers. And this one is my instinct for what I'm going to use today. Again, it is beautiful, but not so dear that I can't put it out for people to be in and out of the house for the holidays. It's a helpful shape. It is simple but dramatic. This is wonderful. However, so is this. Look at this prize. I'm going to move this around a little bit. This is also one of my charity shop discoveries. I have certain shops that I stop by every single week because there are so many goodies to be found. And I think I at most paid $7 or $8 for this one. But I have sort of become known for a lily arrangement that might be vaguely the starting point of what I'm going to show you. And that arrangement was much more complicated. In fact, I don't do it as much as I used to for that reason. But it had 2 or 3 different kinds of palm fronds, exquisite white lilies, and then I would often accent it with orchids, either white phalaenopsis or maybe white or sort of chartreuse, or even a pale golden yellow cymbidium. Really, really fabulous. This is a good contender for today too. And because it's winter, and I like this vase, and some of you might like this sort of thing too. This is a completely different shape than the others. And I wanted to show you that if you like this sort of classic vase shape with a high shoulder, a bit of a neck, and then a flare here, we can use this too. And the good news is I have a lot of orchids. I'm sorry, I have a lot of lilies today. Sorry, my mind is still back on the orchids. We have a lot of lilies, so I can show you several of these, even if I don't build out full arrangements in any of them. Again, I want you to feel that you've seen enough that you can tackle this or something like it for yourself. So, what I think I will do is I will clear some of these away. I will make a little bit of an executive decision on some that we definitely aren't going to use. And then I will bring out the lilies, and I will just jump right in. We'll do it together. I'll see you then. Welcome back, and I hope you enjoy the sight of these fabulous lilies as much as I do. because I went to a bit of trouble to source them, and they are sensational. I also have a little bud vase of trimmings that I'm going to talk about in a minute as well. So, the basic foundation of this arrangement is the partnership of the vase and the blooms. I'm not adding any foliage, I'm not adding any filler. It is just a single type of flower in a vase that shows beautifully. And my thinking overall is this. If your home is rather monochromatic with lighter tones, that could be white, that could be neutrals, that could even have a bit of color to it, grays, so on, beige, white lilies will blend harmoniously in a rather neutral monochromatic way. If, as is likely the case with many people, your decor, and particularly once you have added other holiday decorations, if those colors are rich and deeply saturated, then a beautiful white bloom, such as these, will be a stark contrast. So either way, this is a successful design. And these are the vases I have looked at as a starting point. And I'm going to start with the very tallest one, and I'm going to tell you why. As you maintain your arrangement, which means changing the vase water, washing the stems, and cutting the stems every few days to keep your water immaculately clean, as you do that, you will lose stem length. And as you lose stem length, you need a shorter vase. So this one might work for your first few days or even a week if your house is cool. And then maybe you go down to, let me move this, maybe you go down to one of these. And then maybe a couple of them are unwieldy. So you separate them and put one in this and leave one in the other containers. And then last of all, as you whittle down, you can break them into probably several smaller vases or bud vases, etc. So before we actually make the arrangement, I want to say, if you need to know all the details on selecting flowers, also how to condition them, and all the details of how to take care of them in the vase, go to my website, mathertonbaber.com, select Learn Online, and on demand, there are classes that teach you all of that. Specifically, that information is in my cutting and conditioning class. And I will say, it is a tiny, tiny bit extravagant in terms of cost, but I have had every single person that take it tell me the value is tremendous. They learn far more than they expected. In fact, I recently had someone take it who'd been taking floristry classes for 50 years, she told me, and she had never learned as much in a class. So I hope that's a good endorsement. If you would like to read others, certainly check out my Instagram grid. My website has reviews, and my Google reviews, of course. But the main thing I want to tell you, if you go to a flower market and your flowers are droopy and sad, there is nothing you can do to revive them. So use your senses and use your common sense. I want you to hear this. I hope you can hear that. I'll move my microphone close. All I'm doing is touching these, and they are so beautifully fresh that it's almost like rubbing my fingers on rubber or leather. You can literally hear them squeak, and that is a freshness that you don't always get, for example, in grocery store flowers. But talk to your flower vendor and tell them you want the best they can get you, and very often they'll do what they can to help you. The other thing is, always remove any foliage that will fall below the waterline in your vase. And remove anything that's obviously damaged as soon as you get your flowers home. You know, if I've got a leaf that's crushed or a bloom that is really in bad repair, just go ahead and cut it off from the start. Always, always work with clean vases. If you're using buckets, clean tools. I suggest a good sharp knife. I have some YouTube films in which I show you how to cut with a knife, and also, of course, my classes on my website go into more detail about that. The vases must be sparkling clean, and I never ever use any chemicals, flower food, none of that. Plain, cool water. Also, when you're planning your arrangement, think about where you'll use it in the house. The cooler you keep your house, the longer they will last. You should also keep them away from direct sunlight, drafts, and ripening fruit. Bright shade is perfectly fine, but blazing sun is not. Also drafts, hot or cold. The air moving over the flowers and foliage dehydrates them faster than if the air is not moving. So that is important to keep in mind. And ripening fruit, things like apples, pears, bananas, and so on. They release an ethylene gas, and just like an apple next to a melon encourages the melon to ripen faster, they also encourage your cut flowers to mature faster. So if you handle this properly and you start with beautifully fresh materials, I don't see any reason that an arrangement like this couldn't last you, again, really beautifully fresh, high quality materials, at least 10 days and maybe between 2 and 3 weeks. I keep my house very chilly this time of year, like I think it's probably around 58 degrees right now. That might be cold for some of you, but the flowers, and I love it. So take that as you will. Okay, I have decided to start in this vase. So I'm going to put some water in it, push these things away, and I'll be right back to build the arrangement. Welcome back. The last thing I'll tell you before we start handling the lilies is that they have a special concern for these long stamen. You can see them here. And at the end of the stamen are these anthers that have a kind of velvety filament when they mature, and that filament drops pollen and it stains mercilessly. So the best thing to do is, as they just start to bloom and the bloom opens, you reach in with clean fingers and you just pull them out. Let me show you again. You just simply pull them out and put these in compost or discard them. Now, because I don't stand around watching flowers bloom to catch them at that exact moment, and you probably don't either, I'll show you here on these more mature ones that if they have developed, and you might even see where they're starting to drop on the petal, you can still just support the bloom and pull them out. I remember in the old days when I was working for the florist that I started out with, we would do great big ballrooms, at country clubs and such, full of flowers that arrangements, including a lot of lilies, and I would be running around behind him, pulling them all out, trying not to get the linen, this staining substance drop down on the table linens and such. But inevitably it could happen, and it will almost irreversibly stain fabric, porous like marble surfaces, anything like that. So what do you do? Well, the first thing you do is try to blow it away very gently. The last thing you want to do is take these tiny little filaments that sit on the surface and press them in. Do not press them in. So first of all, try to blow them away. If that is not adequate, then this is not a terry cloth towel, but you might use a fabric with a little bit of a nap to it and just very gently try to whisk it away. And if even still there is a bit of a stain, what you do before you launder that fabric, you take it out into the open sunlight and you just leave it in the sun for 3 or 4 hours, longer if it seems necessary. And the pollen is photosensitive, and it reacts to the sunlight and totally disappears. Do not launder the fabric before you take it into the sun. The laundering process will set the stain and you will not be successful. But people often think that a stain from this kind of pollen ruins their table linens or their slip covers, what have you, and they don't know that you just simply put it in the sun and all will be well. So I hope that's helpful, and I hope it removes any fear that you might have about using such fabulous lilies. They are also scented, and like other things you might have in your home this time of year, paper whites or other kind of narcissi and so on, different varieties have different scents. I'm going to show you 2 varieties today. The one here in the front is the very famous Casablanca lily, widely regarded as the foremost lily ever developed. And then this one in the back is really fabulous, and I hope seeing it will excite you. This one is called Santander, and it is also fabulous. Though I will tell you, like a lot of flowers, even in professional markets, I see them mislabeled. I don't think these are mislabeled, but it often happens. So if you're looking for an extremely specific variety, know the key hallmarks of that variety and make sure that's what you're getting. Don't just trust the label on the pack wherever you buy your flowers. That said, let's jump in. Here we have the vase. I have put clean, cool water. And for a bit more background, you might check my bud vase arrangement film on YouTube, because we're going to use exactly the same technique. Basically, our mechanic, in other words, how we get the flowers to stay in the places we want them, is going to be physics. The stem of the flowers essentially creates a lever, and the bloom is the force, and travel down, down, down the stem. It is exerted against the wall of the vase, and it stays in place. Also, I'm not going to make a great big, completely symmetrical arrangement. I'm going to put them in at a kind of jaunty angle, so almost anyone could do it. Let's start, actually. I've got a lot of buds that are just about to break into bloom, so let's start with those. Now, anytime you have a little, anything imperfect, just go ahead and take it off. But this is a wonderful starting point. Now notice, those are not open yet, so I'll watch for that in the coming days. But I'm going to give this a fresh cut. Of course, my famous long cut, if you have been with me for long. Oh, look at that. Wonder if I hit the fan overhead. Well, not to worry. I'm just going to take off this stem, and this is going to function differently now. No problem. I'll just save it for later. So let's go here. We'll try another. The only real trick to starting is to give yourself a good long cut and let them fall where they want. This is not meant to be overly precious. And I will tell you my idea for the design is one that is very good for anything like this in a vase. You basically want to have 2 or 3 levels. You want to have something higher, blooms higher, foliage higher, as your case may be, and then you want to have a lower level. That gives you a bit of a sense of roundness and fullness that you're not going to get with the typical problem of home arranging, which is just a bunch of sticks willy-nilly. We do want to do better than that. Now, I think we can, I'm going to cut this a little shorter, so I'm going to take the lower leaves off. Long cut. And you see, I just sort of, that leaf is not perfect. I just take it off. And that is a little lower. I want, before I build too much volume, I even want something lower. So let's see what I've got. I've got a bloom here. Oh, this might be great. I've got a big bloom. I've got a big bud, a small bud, and I can remove those anthers right now. They're sort of right at the last moment before they get messy. And even if a little falls on the bloom, just blow it off, no problem. And I just put this in. Now, I can't see it from the front, so let's see what's happening there. Oh, that's very nice. I think it would be very nice as well to have sort of a bit of directional quality. So, let me put in one of these Santanders. This one's quite sensational. My one complaint about these, not this variety, but this batch in particular, is that the stems are a little bit weak. So what I'm going to do is use these other stems to support it. Look at that. Oh, that's lovely. Now, my intent is for this to be, again, asymmetric. I just want it to look casual and dashed in. So let's take some of these lower leaves off. Add this. And I've got some nubs where those leaves didn't break off exactly smoothly, so I'm just going to use my knife, and I use my thumb as a guide so I don't slice into the stem. But I hope you can see there, I just pull over it parallel to the stem, and I take them off without making a big wound, because a big wound would allow bacteria in the vase water to enter and shorten the vase life of this beautiful bloom, which we don't want. And if you are not sure how long to cut your lily, cut it longer and then see how you like it, and you can cut it shorter. Leave it a bit longer and work your way down, because if you cut it very, very short and you're unhappy, there's nothing you can do. Now, I see a leaf here that doesn't look great. I just take it off as I go. Anytime you find those things, remove them right away, or else you will discover them in the photography, or if you're a professional, when your client is looking. And so I have just learned, when you see something imperfect, address it at once. Okay, I'm going to keep working on this, but I'm not going to add much more. And we may do a kind of a time-lapse thing with the film so you can see me make it. But you'll see, I'm going to keep it simple, simple. Stay tuned. Okay, this is basically the design. You're probably saying, my word, how in the world is that enough? Well, I think this is lovely. And could you, if you wanted, add some branches and twigs? Yes. Some wonderful wild curly willow. Wild looking, I don't mean wild grown. Some wonderful curly willow might be charismatic and feel rather Art Deco. Some birch branches might feel very wintry. But for ease of handling, this was very easy to create, and when I need to take them out, refresh the water, trim the stems, and so on, this is manageable to handle. Also, if you have one of these on the closed lid of your piano, and you've got a small vase of them in your reception hall, and you've got one bloom in your guest bath vanity, and so on, very easily, with quite few blooms, quite few stems on whole, you have created the effect, particularly if you're entertaining, of a whole house full of flowers. Look how opulent this feels, and it's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 stems. So yes, these lilies were a bit extravagant to purchase, but they are going to last and last and last, and I didn't need very many. I could have wasted, and I use that word intentionally, wasted a lot more money than I spent on 9 stems, and gotten buckets and buckets full of things that didn't amount to much. This is a lot of look, and it's also realistic for most people to maintain for the life of the flowers in the vase. That to me is a great value, and it doesn't run anyone ragged. So I will leave this one here. In fact, I may have to move it to the side, but I'm going to do at least one more to show you the look in a different container. And just stick around. If it takes very long, again, we may do a time-lapse kind of effect. But I hope you find this inspirational and helpful. And I'm just going to make some room and keep working. Another good idea is to use your bigger buds, bigger blooms toward the bottom, and use your smaller ones toward the top, and it feels more natural. Of course, as always, try to insert your stems so that the bloom looks like it's growing up. If it has a curve, let it curve up like it's growing to the sun. That also looks more natural. And you might say, why in the world do I care about removing the nubs on the stem and all these little details? And I will say it is simply because when you have very few elements, every element must be perfect. And if that seems like too much pressure to you, I understand, but I encourage you just start small. Step by step, you'll see. It's easier than you think. And you will get there in the end. The best advice I can give you as a starting point is to only ever begin with the very, very best materials you can get your hands on. Then the materials have done most of the work for you, and you can allow your cooking, your floristry, your decorating, whatever you're doing, to simply showcase the exquisite materials, and you need to do very little more. Your main job is to not get in their way. It is awfully nice to be doing this outside. It's a little chilly, but also sunny. Just look at that. Isn't that superb? I should also tell you that lilies are safe to be around dogs and children. You should always keep all this type of thing that is not to be eaten away from pets and children. But lilies are not poisonous to dogs. Do not give them to humans. They are poisonous for humans. Don't give them to anyone, but they are particularly poisonous to cats. So please, please beware. Lilies are poisonous to cats, so do not take the risk if you are unsure about the safety of using these in your house. Now you see some of these stems, and you can see me handling them more carefully. They're a little thin, so I am compensating by supporting them in the vase with the other variety. And also I'm leaving on enough foliage that the foliage becomes the only foliage needed in the arrangement. 2 for 1. That's a value you can't beat. You might ask, what was my calculation on removing this leaf but not this leaf? I want to put this in low in the vase, so this would probably be stressed on the edge of the vase, the top lip, but this will not. See, it has this stem to carry it away. So you just have to think about each element as you go. Another really top tip is, as you add stems, make sure that you are not capturing or pressing together any of the stems or the foliage. You want it to look free and effortless, never tortured. I'm pulling out some more of these anthers, as we discussed, because I don't want them falling on something precious. And I have here just one more stem, and I'm not terribly worried about creating symmetry. But these are nice and small, so I want them to maybe come on the top here, as much length as this stem can give me. You know, actually, I've reconsidered. I think I want them low. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. Put them low, and then I'll turn them around so you can have a look. There you go, look at that. Now, these are admittedly one-sided arrangements because I have assumed that they are going to face into the room to be viewed where the main activity of the room happens. However, I quite agree with Gertrude Jekyll, who wrote in her seminal book on garden floristry, probably around the year 1900, that it takes living in a house for a few years and experimenting with placing flowers, either potted plants or cut flower arrangements, in different places. But quite soon, with just a little practice, you learn where the arrangements are most effective. That's true for me here in Kentucky. That's true for us at the cottage in Nashville. I have lots and lots of clients that I've worked with over the years to understand where they can use strategic arrangements most effectively. So give it a try for yourself. And if you're not sure and you want to save the expense of cut flowers or even a wonderful live plant, for once you're sure, just put a big planter or an empty vase in different places and use your imagination. Think, how would that look? And then move it around. How would it look there? And just leave it for a while. Live with it for a few days. And if you don't like it, move it around. If you think, oh, I like it, but I need something smaller, put something smaller. I want something bigger, put something bigger. The beautiful thing of learning a few skills to do things nicely for yourself is that you're in complete control. And as I always say, we equip ourselves with a little knowledge and a few skills to live more beautifully and richly in ways that have almost nothing at all to do with money. So I hope you find that helpful. I will bring these out here and take away anything I haven't used so you can have one last look, and I'll say goodbye. See you in a minute. Welcome back. We have made it nearly to the end. Thank you so much for sticking around. I've completely forgotten until this moment to say, if you like this kind of content, I'm delighted. But please remember to like this film, subscribe to the channel, certainly share it with people who you know who might enjoy it as well. And because I'm a tiny little channel and a tiny little business who is not hugely boosted in the algorithm, please don't wait on YouTube to send you my content, because it might not. If you want to see what I'm up to, check my channel occasionally and you'll be sure not to miss anything, but do subscribe in the meanwhile. You can also find me on Instagram at imathertonbaber. My website is imathertonbaber.com. On my website also is my blog where you find all the recipes and such, which do not apply to this film, but you get the idea. So here we are. I hope that it is abundantly obvious that this is a casual, sort of whisked together look. It is not fussy. It does not give any impression of being tortured. See, as I told you, when you find things to fix, fix them. That was a broken leaf, and I want to take it off so I don't find it later at the wrong moment. But these are also evolving arrangements. Because I have used so many buds, this is going to keep blooming and blooming, and all of these are going to go on and on. As blooms are spent, remove them. Now, you might have a question. What if one bloom is spent, but there are still buds or blooms that are perfectly beautiful? Just take a sharp, clean secateur or smooth blade, in other words, not serrated floristry knife, and remove the spent bit. There's no sense in throwing out this whole stem if only this one bloom is finished. All these materials are admittedly a little expensive, so make them last. If there's one thing I can say will make the most difference in how long such arrangements will last, it's keeping your house cool. Cool, you don't have to freeze, but cool. And the next two things would be keep them out of drafts, and do keep the vase water clean. It makes all the difference. Again, keep any kind of decor, fresh or otherwise, away from children and pets. For lilies, especially away from your cats and away from humans that might eat them. Now, what if you don't want to use lilies? What else could you use? Well, a lily is a long, straight stem with a branched form. And that form, in combination with this shape of vase, is what allows us to create this look. So, you could use other things. Even through the winter months, you could easily get your hands on beautiful carnations. You could easily get your hands on all sorts of flowers that are cut from bulbs. That could be hyacinth, tulip, daffodils, narcissi, amaryllis, fritillaria, on and on. However, they each have their own shape that will relate to a container in a different way. So if you want a deep dive on how to really successfully pair your fresh cut materials with containers, please go on my website, imathertonbaber.com, and think about taking my vase arranging class. It is a much deeper dive than we have time to do on YouTube. That said, it is always a good idea to create a powerful visual impact. And it's a trick I have used in professional entertaining when budgets are slim. Even if you can't buy the most extravagant flowers, buy one flower in quantity. For example, a really interesting, maybe bi-colored carnation, and use a lot of them. And by virtue of of the quantity and how you have maybe staggered them or arranged them in a pave, whatever appeals to you, they will create more of an impact than if you've got 3 carnations and 2 roses and a couple of old tulips. Just in the same way that by having a mound of these fabulous lilies, it creates a dazzling impact. I also wanted to say, those of you with a really keen, observant eye have noticed I'm on a different table than I normally use when I'm here in the garden. Normally I use an ornamental metal tabletop. I have not done that this time because I wanted to protect all the crystal vases, crystal and glass vases I've used today. So even in the way you work, all the little details matter. And I hope I have given you some inspiration, a little bit of education, and certainly some confidence, not just to try this type of arrangement for yourself this holiday, but also to do the holidays your way. I imagine, because of the way I've introduced it, I will publish this film first in the 2-episode holiday series. But do watch for the other one because it will be beautiful and I hope exciting, and certainly the idea is very, very approachable. And until then, thanks for watching. I'll see you soon. Happy holidays.